As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome back to the podcast. Special week because we get back-to-back days. I know that's not typically what we do, but again, just a heavy news day on Tuesday. Pushed our Tuesday recording back to Wednesday, and now we're on the Thursday recording. And man, what a day. Man, what a day it's been. I mean, this morning, the recruiting front, it's one of those things that, like we like to say, it doesn't just make headlines. It kind of rewrites a narrative a little bit. If you're anywhere near your phone or near the internet, you saw it. Bill Bedenbaugh didn't just land a big name. He landed two. First, a massive flip. You got 5-star offensive tackle Cooper Hackett was committed to Texas Tech. Now he's committed to the Oklahoma Sooners. And then just minutes later, literally minutes later, Oklahoma doubled down and added Kaeden Penny, a 4-star tackle out of Bixby, who chose Oklahoma over the likes of LSU and Ohio State. And it's not a situation where it's not like LSU had offered and Ohio State had offered. They were in deep. Both of those schools were in deep with Penny. But it wasn't, I mean, it's not fully a flip, like Hackett was a flip. He was committed to Texas Tech. But this other one, it's not a full flip, but OU was like in the distance. I mean, it was LSU and Ohio State, and then boom, there's the Sooners. So in one morning, basically, Oklahoma went from solid recruiting for the 2027 class to just dominant in the trenches, double commitments, one with a big flip, double statements. And, listen, that's not something that happens by accident. That's something that happens when a program has momentum, both on the field, in the weight room, and then also, nationally with a clear blueprint for the future. And when you go back to the Michigan game with this, right? You go back to that massive emphasis that they put on that game. All the recruits were there for that night game. And remember, that wasn't just, a night primetime matchup. That was the only top 25 matchup for the weekend. And then what's followed up in the next 2 weeks is just continued dominance. The way this team looks, the perception of this team, now you're seeing it start to pay dividends on the recruiting front. And, since Venables arrived 4 years ago, Oklahoma's talked about rebuilding an identity around dominance in the trenches. And we've seen it this year. We've seen it in 2025, what it looks like on the defensive side of the ball. But now we're talking offensive line. And the offensive line affects the running game. It affects the physicality, that nature on the offensive side of the ball, the exact same way we see it on the defensive side. And landing two top tackle prospects, by the way, the number 1 and number 2 ranked players from the state of Oklahoma. You landed both of them in one morning. That's not just something to add depth. That's sending a message. Oklahoma fully intends to own the line of scrimmage once again. So let's break this down just a little bit. Let me give you a few more thoughts. For at least since Bob Stoops arrived in 1999, going into that championship season of 2000. Oklahoma had a history. Its offensive lines, they weren't just good. They were the best in the conference. You know, you got the Joe Moore Award years. You've got the big guys up front who made every quarterback's life easier and just punished defenders for trying to get to him. But then you got, you know, you've got coaching turnover, you've got conference transitions, and that grip that Oklahoma had up front on the offensive line, you saw it begin to slip. And amongst the fan base here in Sooner Nation, there's been a hunger, right, to see those trenches return to the glory days. And when you get commitments like this, like Hackett and Penny, that's not just good recruiting. I mean, this is a deliberate return to an identity that once defined Oklahoma football. We talk about legacy, we talk about DNA, and this is it. And let's be honest, I mean, flipping Hackett from Texas Tech, that was already a headline on its own. But then you follow that up with Penny, who, again, serious in the weeds with LSU and Ohio State, amongst others. Oklahoma, they're not satisfied just to, like, you know, compete for 3-star or just in-state guys because they're in-state. They are going to go toe-to-toe for blue-chip talent, particularly blue-chip talent from the state of Oklahoma. And that's the kind of aggressiveness that we see this 2027 cycle begin to suggest. And it's not just 2027. I mean, we saw some of it in 2026. We saw some of it in 2025. But it's clear Oklahoma intends to close recruiting gaps with the rest of the SEC elite and other national programs. And this is the kind of recruiting battle that you have to win if you're serious about contending, because this was a battle that was in your own backyard for in-state, for local talent. And if you want to win titles, you've got to win your home recruiting battles. And again, it's not just about quantity here. This is about quality and flexibility. Because Penny, I mean, he's versatile. He's played both sides of the ball in high school. He's logged defensive snaps as well as offensive snaps. And he's been a huge part of this run of championships at Bixby. So you look at a two-way experience. It speaks to his athleticism, but also something that's very important here. It speaks to his football IQ. And that's the type of versatility that's going to matter in future schemes. And we're seeing more offensive lines where the tackles shift. We're seeing guards pull. I mean, obviously the zone blocking thing requires guys who can move, and Penny fits that bill. Now don't underestimate depth, because as we know, football is a game of attrition. Now, it's not just rotations, it's injuries, it's fatigue. They all sneak up. And I don't think you can ever have too many high-end tackles. And so Oklahoma's got multiple tackles committed. And that doesn't just give you like a foundation. It also gives you some insurance that they can rotate without dropping. They can keep fresh legs in the game. And it pushes competition at every level amongst that offensive line. So this is what the 2027 class looks like right now. And obviously it's so early in the cycle because we haven't even closed the door on 2026. And to be honest with you, I'm not a super big fan of getting this far ahead in recruiting because so much happens. But this is so big that you can't not talk about it. And when you look at this 2027 class, it's small because it's just getting started. But you've got Cooper Hackett. He's your crown jewel right now. 5-star offensive tackle. Followed by Kaeden Penny, 4-star offensive tackle, the number 1, number 2 guys from the state of Oklahoma. Then you got Damari DeZerum, 4-star athlete. And then you've got Luke Wilson, another offensive tackle rated as a 3-star guy. So 3 of your 4 in the class are offensive linemen. Physical players. Physical guys tied into what's going to happen up front. Now, the Oklahoma's earliest class rankings by On 3 have the Sooners sitting, amongst the top few in the country. And obviously, there's still names that are in motion. There's still flips that are possible, and you're going to add to this class. It's not going to be a class of 4 people. Nobody thinks that. But if they're getting this hot of a start with this type of elite talent, man, what does the future look like here? But whether this group stays at the top of the class or whether they drop down to top 10 or lower, I don't think they will. But if they did, the trajectory is there. The emphasis is clear. Oklahoma's building a class that wants to be defined by power in the trenches. And what's more, strength in recruits like these, it has a ripple effect. Right? It's easier to recruit other players who want to be a part of a line of excellence. So they see that Oklahoma's serious about the line. They see the guys that are there, and it's compounding. And top recruits help recruit future guys. So you've got your tackles, but where are your guards? Where's the center? Where's those interior linemen? It's possible that you'll just see this 2027 offensive line become a brand of their own. Now keep in mind, it is early. It's so early when we're talking about 2027. That's a long way from being a sealed deal. And obviously, you always have that danger, that risk, that verbal commitments change. Because that's what you just got a guy to change from Texas Tech to Oklahoma. And the 2026 class, it's not closed. But again, you look at what this day says. And this is why I needed to talk about something that's so far away. Oklahoma's back in the fight. Back in the fight for the top blue chip line guys out there. Now remember, recruiting it's promise. It's not guaranteed. Players still have to develop. They still have to adapt to college level pass rushes. They have to learn and refine technique, and they have to stay healthy. Along all of that, they have to mesh with the coaching. So when you look at Penny and Hackett, what you see is excellent recruits, but let's be careful not to label them as instant fixes. And why we see the early results of the 2025 season, they've provided fuel, the wins over Michigan that we just talked about, Auburn last Saturday. There's still questions out there. Can Oklahoma continue to pair what they're doing with this season, especially in the light of the quarterback situation? Can they continue to gain recruiting momentum by how they execute on the field? We're only a third of the way through the season. And as Bill Bedenbaugh develops the talent that's on campus now and the relationship he has with the recruits, is that going to match the same evolution that other big-time programs within this conference are doing? And it's really going to come down to looking at how long until these guys see the field, how long until these guys push for starts, how long until they have an impact on the product. And when you're talking about 2027 guys, the answer here is it's a long time, right? It's a long time before we answer those questions. But what Bill Bedenbaugh, the confidence that he gives them leading up to their final commitment and signing on the line, in regards to those questions, that's going to be what plays out moving forward. So when you get these big-time linemen, it's not just about strength, it's about a mindset. And when your offense is anchored in line dominance, when you run downhill, when you win battles before the snap, you cultivate this mentality, this attitude of toughness that, not just you see it and feel it, but so does your opponent. And what we want as Sooner Nation is for that culture of nastiness to return to Oklahoma's offensive line. What we see on the defensive side, now we want it back on the offensive side. And in this conference, offenses that win, they're powerful. And the difference in that is often who wins the war up front, who can be the most physical early in the game. And when you get more line talent, like we've seen on the defensive side, you have the raw tools to make that fight winnable. So, these guys come in with some expectations. Look at Michael Fasosi, right? The moment they arrive, they'll be compared with the guys who came before them. And that's okay, because that's a part of Oklahoma's brand. That's what builds this internal competition with the team. And it forces older guys to stay sharp. And so, again, you have those ripple effects across strength and conditioning, across coaching technique and recruiting. Every aspect of it benefits. But going back to a messaging standpoint, to recruits, to fans, to opponents, it says that Oklahoma has returned to a posture of power, not trying to play catch up anymore. The Sooners aren't waiting on stars to fall. They're out there actually hunting for them. And so this recruiting spree by Bill Bedenbaugh, it wasn't just adding players. It was laying that cornerstone of the 2027 class. Getting Penny on the heels of Hackett it's a 1-2 punch. It's a move that signals a dedicated recalibration, if we can say that, to what Oklahoma, they want to get back to that identity up front. Basically, Oklahoma's saying, we're going to dominate again on the line of scrimmage on both sides. And we're going to be able to beat you on both sides with muscle, with technique, and with depth. But now the real work begins, because, again, you got to continue to cultivate those relationships and to develop the players. You got to integrate them. You got to stay ahead of attrition. And you can't undersell this. You've got to match in-game execution with the recruiting hype. But if Oklahoma can turn this type of recruiting into a constant trench dominance, especially in the SEC, they'll impose their will on opponents, much like what we saw last Saturday. And that's the era. That's what Oklahoma fans have hoped was coming back. And Thursday morning got us this taste, this glimpse of that. Maybe it's there. So what do you think? Are these guys the future anchors? I think they are. This is the Sooner Nation podcast.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her.
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
On September 26th, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go! Here I am.
One battle after another. Only in theaters September 26th. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
You can't hide.
So I want to get into a little bit of the future schedule, these new rivals that the SEC is giving Oklahoma. And I know we've got both. We've got the rivals. We've got the schedule for like the next 4 years. But I want to take it one step at a time. And I want to focus right now more than anything else on these quote unquote rivals, because I think there's some good here. I think when you look at a permanent opponents, and that word permanent is kind of weird to me, because basically permanent for the next 4 years, and then they reevaluate. And 2026, it kind of feels like a long way off. But the reality is, when you look at this, opponent list, pretty much you're already there. I mean, the groundwork's being laid right now for what's going to be these quote rivals, right? Think about it. When they start the 9-game schedule rotation next year, they're going to have 3 annual opponents. Now, the 2 of them are so familiar already. And that third one was a little bit of a curveball. I don't think anybody thought Ole Miss was coming. We talked about Arkansas. We talked about Texas A&M. A lot of people thought the conference was pushing Oklahoma towards LSU. But I think what you see is the conference wants to at least attempt to balance history with this fresh competitiveness. But of these 3 opponents, I mean, no surprises at all. The Red River rivalry, that's the anchor. That's the anchor opponent for Oklahoma. It always has been, always will be. It's not just a game. It's a cultural event. It is one of the crown jewels in all of college football. Not just the SEC, but in all of college football. And nothing about the move to the SEC for Oklahoma and Texas ever put this game in jeopardy. So look, it starts at the Cotton Bowl. But think about how many times has this game had national title implications? How many times has this game shaped the conference championship race? And there's not a lot of schools out there that can say this, but Texas, they do lead the all-time series. 64, 51, and 5, in case you were wondering. But since the turn of the century, it's a little bit different. Oklahoma's gone 17-9. So this is the game. We just talked about recruiting in that opening segment. This game, dang, it is so important for recruiting. It is so important for TV ratings. And honestly, this is like the emotional heartbeat of both programs. I mean, think about when we heard the John Mateer news this week. The very first thing Oklahoma fans did is they went and looked. They were trying to count the days. How many days till Texas? That's how important. No one cared about Kent State. It's how many days till Texas. And if you're Brent Venables, you clearly know everything runs through this game. You beat them consistently and you control this narrative, and it is huge in every aspect of the program. And then you've got Missouri. I think it was almost a given. I wanted Arkansas. I thought it'd be more fun. But Oklahoma and Missouri, it makes sense. They go back to the Big 8, then the Big 12, and now the SEC. But Oklahoma, I mean, it's not, they say you're permanent rivals, but 67, 25, and 5 is the edge that Oklahoma has in this. So initially you want to say, it's not much of a rival, but then you think about this. A lot of Oklahoma fans have this game circled in Norman for this season because the Sooners have lost 2 of the last 3 meetings. And that, you think about that 30-23 loss in Columbia last year, and it still stings. And so because of that, this is a pairing that kind of checks the boxes geographically, traditionally, and it offers a measuring stick for both programs because Missouri's been surging under Eli Drinkowitz. And Oklahoma, what they really want is they want to prove that they can continue to dominate old rivals even in a new league. So if you go back to the Big 8, Big 12 days, and you miss those rivals, well, here he goes. And this is going to scratch that itch. Now, the surprise was Ole Miss. And and this is where it gets interesting. Ole Miss was not happy to draw Oklahoma. I mean, and I get it. If we're talking about rivals are based regionally. So Arkansas, Texas A&M, they seem like, more likely candidates based on a region. But the SEC, in its infinite wisdom, they assign Oklahoma an opponent as a new rival that they've only faced twice and lost both times. 26-14 last year in Oxford was the last time they faced each other. So the Rebels, clearly not a traditional rival. And the campus in Oxford's roughly 560 miles from Norman. But I still think this matchup has potential. Because you've got two passionate fan bases, the traditional staunch fan base of the SEC in Oxford. And then you've got the new up-and-comers who have their own traditions, have had their own success, more success than they've had in Oxford. You got dynamic offensive philosophies. I mean, Lane Kiffin is a trip for an interview, a trip for on the coaching sideline. And you got atmospheres between these two campuses that rank pretty high in terms of college football's bucket list experiences. So on one end, you got Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. On the other end, you got the Grove. I think it could blossom into something as far as these, quote, new rivals go. I really feel like this could be pretty entertaining. But here's the craziest thing to me. When you look at these, rivals, we knew it was going to be Texas. That was the no-brainer. You kind of thought Missouri, but you really didn't know. But here's the thing. These, quote, new rivals, when this all kicks in 2026, next season, it'll be the third year in a row all these teams have played each other. I mean, obviously, Oklahoma and Texas go back over 100 years. But 2026 will be the third year Oklahoma faces Missouri in a row. It'll be the third year Oklahoma faces Ole Miss in a row. And so it's not, there's really nothing new to this. I mean, these rivalries, quote, these things have already started. And maybe that was part of the strategy. I don't know. But, I mean, when you look at drama, I mean, if you're going to pull Ole Miss and you want something new, you look at drama. I mean, Auburn would have been a much, much, much better option than Ole Miss because you got the drama of last year, Michael Hawkins, the freshman leading them to victory. You got the drama of this year with the, quote, hidden receiver trick. So there's already drama there, and now you got to go like 4 years before you got to go 4 years before you face Auburn again. So I don't know. Greg Sankey, they emphasize three factors in this permanent opponent thing. Number one was protecting rivalries. And that's why OU Texas was never in jeopardy. Then you've got competitive fairness, and then you got geography, which is why Ole Miss doesn't make a lot of sense. Because Texas covers tradition, Missouri covers familiarity. I guess Ole Miss injects some novelty here. So for Oklahoma, that means, a slate that spans 3 tiers of SEC culture. You got the flagship rivalry, you've got the old school conference foe, and then you've got the wild card. And it also spreads like marquee matchups around the league, I guess. Texas already draws Arkansas and Texas A&M over the next 4 years. Texas A&M and Texas, that was a definite thing. And Arkansas pretty much is right there as well. We're looking at old school rivalries from the Southwest Conference days. So pairing Oklahoma with Ole Miss, I guess it ensures that the Rebels get a high-profile date each year while also diversifying Oklahoma's footprint beyond, the traditional recruiting lanes. Mississippi has been known to put some pretty high-profile recruits out there. And for Brent Venables, it's just another step on the ladder that defines his tenure at Oklahoma. He went 2-6 last year. Now he sits at 1-0, and the Sooners are in the top 10. So now you got you know for sure you've got regular dates with these three opponents. It's going to give you a clear roadmap for what you want. Beat Texas, and you hold the biggest headline in the league. Reassert your dominance over Missouri, and you prove you're not just, a Big 12 power transplanted into a tougher conference. And you figure out a way to beat Ole Miss because they've never done that. You get credibility from the traditionalist in this conference. So I think it's going to be fun. The SEC's 9-game model guarantees every school plays all 15 conference opponents home and away over a 4-year span. But these three are going to be the spine of the schedule. And Oklahoma fans, if you enjoyed that trip last year to Oxford, now you're going to have multiple chances. Conversely, Norman's going to host Lane Kiffin's program this year, next month. And that's going to be their first visit to Oklahoma, but now it looks like the first of many. And keep in mind, because the league's going to reevaluate these pairings every 4 years. That's why the word permanent just kind of scratches my head a little bit. But nothing is set in stone. So like if your budding rival with Arkansas or A&M makes more sense in 2030, the SEC can make a pivot. But now, Oklahoma's path is going to run through Texas, Missouri, and Ole Miss. And I think this, in many ways, this slate is a microcosm of Oklahoma's SEC journey. You part tradition, part challenge, part unknown. You've got the Red River rivalry preserved. You've got the rekindling of an old Big 8, Big 12 flame. And then you got that dash of Southern Gothic football pageantry, if you will. For fans, it means familiar foes, along with new road trips, and a clear sense of what Oklahoma football is going to look like as it grows its footprint within this conference. Now, for the program, it's an opportunity. Every fall, every autumn, over the next 4 years, you got this opportunity to prove it belongs at the top of the sport's toughest conference. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, interesting, but fun. I want to talk about some big SEC power rankings. That's something we haven't got to do here. So let me throw that your way here and just.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
What's funny is that I thought with no game to preview that, we'll just run through a pretty quick podcast, but no, we're going on and on and on. But something that we do talk about every Thursday is kind of how we rank the SEC. And I don't know if you caught it, but I almost said Big 12. I haven't said it in a long time, but I almost did. I caught myself as we ended that last segment. But I want to go over my SEC power rankings going into this weekend, and more importantly, what I think it says about Oklahoma right now. So we'll go through the full board briefly, but here's the main story at the very top. I still have Georgia at number 1. Now they were off last week. They obviously didn't lose ground. That shootout with Tennessee from earlier, 2 weeks ago, it still lingers around. But I don't think anyone has done enough in this conference to leapfrog the Bulldogs. I still say that their win over Tennessee is the best win in the conference. But the bigger headline here, especially for those of us around the program in Norman, is who I have right behind them. Because Oklahoma is holding down that spot, that number 2 spot. And the way I put them there, I think it's pretty important because they didn't get there by flexing on Sam Houston State. They didn't get there by blowing out lesser opponents. They have done that, but that's not what they did. I've got them at number 2 because they have top 25 wins. Where Georgia may have the best win in the conference, I think Oklahoma's got the best resume right now. You got the win over Michigan. You got the win over Auburn. And obviously Auburn, it wasn't flashy. It wasn't like we hung half 100 on them. Those are the old Barry Switzer Saturdays. But it was a quality SEC victory. It's the kind that you need if you're serious about being more than just a good story in this conference. Now, the worst thing that's going to happen is if Auburn goes out and just lays an egg in College Station. That kind of dampens this argument a little bit, takes away from it. But I think what impressed me the most is what impressed everybody the most. It's the defense. When it absolutely had to, the defense answered. That's what kept Oklahoma, in my opinion, that's what keeps Oklahoma right now ahead of LSU in these rankings. Because LSU is lighting up the scoreboard, but when you look at opponent quality, even that win against Clemson suddenly doesn't mean much. And I think resume, Oklahoma stacks up as the best in the conference, as I said. Now think about how many times we've talked over the last few years about Oklahoma's defense being the missing piece. And Brent Venables, he came in with a reputation as a defensive mastermind. And when you look at what they did against Auburn, again, not a pretty game, but that was defensively a proof of concept. And when you're the new kid on the block, you don't get style points for blowing out Group of Five or FCS teams. Why was that hard to say? FCS teams. You get respect in this conference by outlasting the opponents of the conference on your worst day. And it wasn't a great day for Oklahoma on Saturday. When you look at the turnover, you look at the penalties. But you look around the rest of the top five in this conference, you got LSU at number 3. But I just talked about their resume. They need to replicate their balance against not just Power 5 teams, but conference teams. They got to do that before I would consider putting them ahead of Oklahoma. Texas A&M, I've got them at number 4. I think they've got a good roster. They're off to a good start, but like LSU, they don't have a signature win, nor does Texas at number 5 or Alabama at number 6. So right now, Oklahoma's not just ahead of LSU, it's also ahead of these other schools because of consistency. Because what we've seen from them, even against ranked opponents, it's been the same. It's been consistent. Oklahoma's entire SEC narrative hinges on moments like what they just had. Everybody knows it. We've already mentioned it in this podcast. They went 2-6 in conference last season. Now they're 1-0. They're sitting in the top 10. And so it's not just me who thinks highly of them. For crying out loud, some AP voter from the state of Ohio gave them a first place vote. But if Oklahoma can continue to win games like this against middle and upper tier SEC opponents, it gives that foundation for them making a run at Georgia, making a run at Alabama, making a run at the playoff. You don't get to number 2 in the rankings on reputation alone. You get there by answering questions week after week, and that's exactly what Oklahoma has done. So just for context, looking around the rest of the conference, obviously Georgia number 1. I've got LSU at number 3. We talked about Texas A&M, Texas, and Alabama rounding up those next 3 spots. At number 7, I got Tennessee, and they probably need to come up. And then Ole Miss, and then Missouri at number 9. Now, I want to mention just Ole Miss and Missouri real fast, because those are what we just talked about. Those are Oklahoma's permanent SEC opponents starting next season. So we're not just talking about numbers on a page. These are the matchups that is going to define Oklahoma's future. And look where they are. They're in that middle tier with the opportunity to move up. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Auburn, that's the next level. Followed by Florida, Arkansas, and Kentucky at your bottom 3. And man, when you look at Arkansas, I do think that's one of those losses that you can put the word heartbreak in there. That loss to Memphis last year, that puts them down closer to the cellar. And Kentucky, look, they're punching, checking the boxes, but come on, they're struggling. That's a struggle bus for Mark Stoops. So here's the big picture. Where does this leave Oklahoma? I think at this moment, through the first month of the season, the Sooners are squarely in the national conversation. But there is zero room for complacency. There's zero margin of error, particularly without John Mateer moving forward for the next foreseeable future. The defense is showing not just signs of being the backbone of the team. They're showing signs of being the identity of this team. And the offense hasn't been flashy, but it's been capable. And that's what's got to happen for Oklahoma to stay at number 2 or to even move up. They have to keep winning SEC games the same way that they did last Saturday against Auburn. Style points, they're really not going to matter as much as stacking victories. That's why I think it's funny about Arch Manning's flex over Sam Houston. What does that mean? Well, it means you still lost to the only ranked opponent you faced this season, and you looked really bad doing it. Style points don't matter. Conference wins matter. And man, that's why I'm excited, because you do sense the narrative shifting. Even looking at a potential future without John Mateer, people are talking about, I'm one of them, how Oklahoma can win the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma's not just a Big 12 transplant anymore. The Sooners are contenders, legitimate contenders, at least through the first 4 weeks of the season. Now, don't get me wrong. Georgia is still the gold standard. But right now, Oklahoma is the clear number 2 in these rankings. And I will fight to the death over it right now. Because it's not just about talent, it's about resilience. It's about resume. The question is, can the Sooners keep doing what they did against Auburn, answering when it counts, and finding ways to win even without John Mateer? Doing that is going to force the national media and the rest of the conference to treat them like what they're becoming, which is not just a threat to win the conference, but a threat to make some noise in the college football playoff. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for giving us a listen. Please like and give us a subscribe, and we'll see you online, heartland-sports.com. We'll be back Sunday to talk some more weekend in Sooners as they get ready to face Kent State the following week. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.
I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you.